Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I bet I've got people joining in from all over the place, and I'm not even quite sure what time this will be aired. I'm Fran O'Neill. I'm part of the faculty at the New York Studio School, and I'm joined today with Catherine Bickford. Hi, Catherine, how are you doing?
Hi, Fran. I'm having a wonderful day here in Maine. It's beautiful and sunny.
Awesome. That's one of the fun things, right? Is we get to, experience teaching and experience the wonders of the studio school via virtual online, which to me was a game changer for COVID and for so many people throughout the US and also throughout the world. We've had people join us, and today we're going to talk about the virtual online as well as my upcoming marathon that I'll also be teaching virtually. So this means you get to join us from any part of the world. And we've had people join us from, let me see, Australia, which is where I'm located at the moment. I've got a student at the moment from Egypt and one from South Africa. And I've also had many students from Australia across the United States. And I bet there's been students in other parts of the studio school joining in from all over the world. But Catherine, let me ask you this. What made you come to the studio school?
I really wanted to work on my drawing. So I felt like as a painter that I was putting drawings together, but I had never really studied drawing intensely. And that's what attracted me.
Ah, that's so awesome. And the studio school's so well known for the drawing marathons. Is that how you first heard about the school, or how did you first hear about it? I'm curious.
Actually, it was through COVID as well, because um, I started teaching classes during COVID online. And then I thought, wow, if I can teach online, what can I take online? And so I started looking, and I ended up being, accepted into the first cohort of virtual certificate at New York Studio School. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's awesome, right? And I think we had about 14 students in that class. And I know that we're going to have a quick look around at your studio and you're going to show us some of your work. But what I'm going to do is just share my page for a second, and we'll have a very quick look at some of the work that's been produced in that first cohort. So we've got people, and for me as a teacher and faculty member, what do? I basically, and this is part of the structure, which I'll get you to talk a little bit about too, Catherine, is as a teacher, I have my set time that I meet with students, exactly like going to class, except there's the beauty of it is that you're in your own studio and that you actually get to make work in your own studio and you can access that studio at any time. So I'm going to just share my page and just show everyone very briefly some of the work that has been produced in the class online in people's own studios. And I think if I remember rightly, this work here by Karen was approximately, I'm going to say 5 feet by 6 feet. So, we deal with color. We deal with like looking at composition. I challenge you hopefully with whatever you're up to. So we had a lot of different ways of people making and thinking about work. And we basically had people sometimes learning from other masterworks, doing transcriptions, working alongside each other. We would meet each week and we would talk about what each person had gotten up to, right? And what they were interested in and what they were actually maybe challenged by during the week, right? And therefore, you would also meet, if I'm right to say, Catherine, potentially together, right? And you talk about the work with each other at different times. So it really created this online community, which is something else that was really pretty surprising in so many ways. So what I'm doing at the moment is just flicking through some of my students' work from over the last year and a half, I think, or the last semester, sorry. And you're seeing a kind of a diversity within the work too. This work is by Jason, one of the students here. And so, what we would do again is he would bring in his own ideas. I would challenge each student on whatever they were up to, right? So that we actually maybe got people working in landscape. We had people working much more with, broader ideas of memory, history, maybe even working a little bit further into abstraction. And I'll just have a quick look at this series of Irenes, because I think this is an awesome lot where we get to potentially see this one painting that, if I remember rightly, is about 6 feet by maybe 8 feet, grow and change, right? Grow and change. And, to me, that was one of the most exciting things, in giving people permission, but also guiding them at times to really, and this is Hen's work, and she's tuning in from Egypt, and that was a transcription project she did. But, watching people grow and change within their work was pretty interesting. And Catherine, you and I were just talking before you had that awesome word, transformation, that you used. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, what you think for yourself, and maybe walk us around your studio?
Sure. Yeah, I think when I think of the studio school, so I've been there just through 2 years now out of a 3-year program. And I would say the transformation is real. What happened to me since I've started is that I've allowed myself to completely reorient the way I think about my drawing and painting, and completely become a different painter. And I see that happening all around me. It's a level of sophistication that just is much higher. The standard is higher. It's a very high standard at the school.
Awesome. Catherine, do you want to show us some of the work that you've got in your studio? And I know that we even talked about some of the collages and things that you did in drawing classes, and what that meant for you as an artist.
Sure, I can start with that one collage drawing that we did in your drawing course, because we do a lot of, and this one here ended up being it ended up being a very serious experiment for me. And I really felt like I was able to think about my composition and my color differently after doing this collage exercise. And I remember in the beginning, I was a little resistant because it wasn't just drawing. And I thought, why is she getting us to do collage? And I just, bit my lip and did it. And we've done that a few times since. And every time I just get these really dramatic results. And then they end up feeding my painting. So this whole palette ended up kind of over here in this new painting that I did. So that really influenced how I approached my painting afterward. And
That's so
that interesting.
So interesting. Let's walk us through some of the other work. It's a good pace you're going at, because we're getting to see the surfaces, we're getting to see your experimentation, and how much basically, color has become a real feature, but also how the image is quite impactful, and how much you basically really move around the whole rectangle. What do you feel like for you has been potentially, and I know you just mentioned collage was one of the game changers in a way, but what do you feel like for you has really, composition wise, what have you felt like has grown the most for you?
Well, two things that I think you've really had us work on. One is, figuring out where things are in space. So like working on these floorboards here, I've been sort of placing space between the viewer and the objects in the painting. And then sort of figuring out what's the furthest back part. So having like a little space where there's an open door in the back has ended up being really important to me. There's a little hidden dog on this couch. I'm enjoying hiding figures in my paintings now, and then just sort of getting spontaneity. I think that's something that I brought in with me, but now I'm trusting it more. And actually being able to trust your work is a big part of what we learn at school. Knowing how to talk about your own work and sort of sorting out why you're making it a certain way, and then being able to, share that thought process with others.
This is awesome to see. In terms of your studio, like I know that we talked a little bit about this yesterday in our online session too, but I know that I had you reorganize it a little bit to make it more workable for you. How do you feel it's working for you in terms of just being able to go out to your own studio and work on things? And where is your studio is it in your house, or is it a separate building? I'm just curious.
Over my garage, and I have water, so that's nice. But the walls are strange. It's like an attic, and so I didn't have any really big walls to work on. But I had some old, like, sections of walls that I used to have hanging in a gallery, and I turned them into these rolling painting and drawing walls. So you can see how I had mounted easels on them, and these actually move around. So I trapped wood into these gorgeous painting and drawing spaces. But before that, I was working on foam core. You can kind of see the foam core back here. And that was actually a really good idea. So working on foam core, you can stack your drawings. You can put them away or leave them out. So like this is super interesting. I've done all these gesture drawings. So if I'm doing a painting where I need a figure, I can go back through some of my drawings and think, well, do any of these figures work? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Let's do this. Let's maybe bring you back to your camera on the computer. I'll remove that spotlight. Let's have you share your drawing Padlet, because I think that's pretty informative. And I also want you maybe even to talk a little bit about how you went about sourcing your imagery over the last, say 6 months and what that meant for you.
Sure. So you want me to share my drawing Padlet?
Yeah, let's have a look at, because I know that that's pretty impressive, I think. And maybe it even shows potentially where you came from a little bit, and how much you're, really, you've got loads of different work in there, right? Where you're thinking about single figures, but also how to make, the whole composition work, and how different it is to maybe move around when you're not just focusing on the figure. And, we've got different types of work that, as you just said, you use them for different sources. But then at the end of the day, we really get to see this immersion from like just drawing every single week, right? And the marathons in particular really give you that kickstart too, right?
Right. And this is actually all work just from this year. So it doesn't even show last year's drawings. And I thought last year's drawings were, really exciting as well. So from the moment you pick up your charcoal or pencil in your first marathon, you're making amazing work because of the way that you're being forced to do it for so many hours a day. It just happens automatically. You get really interesting drawings, and I've seen that with everyone. So, it is drawing that's just so much better than a 3-hour class or an hour class once a week. It just, you make leaps and bounds.
I often talk about that, saying that like the marathons, if you're having a bad day with drawing and you're doing it once a week, you kind of forget about it after the class is finished. Whereas if you're having a bad day in the marathon, you have to come back and work through it, which is, I think, actually pretty amazing, because then you actually push the work further and you push through those stuck moments at different times, which is pretty intriguing. Catherine, walk me through what your average week at the studio school would look like for you, working from home, of course.
Okay, well, one of the things that's really exciting about being virtual is your commute is very easy. So, a lot of times I'm, getting a lot of other things done and then rushing to class. And then once class starts, you're stuck there all day. You're not bouncing in and out. So you're going to get 3 or 4 hours of drawing in, and then maybe have a break. And then you're going to go back and do 3 or 4 more hours of drawing. So it's pretty, I could say the word grueling, but I mean it in the kindest way. I really feel like every class pushes you further than you think you can go. And that's part of why you get better.
Nice. So how many different classes were you doing each week? And I'll get you to stop your share there for us. And what I'll do is even just share some other work that we've got up here too. What would you do each week? I know you met with me once, which was a 4-hour class. How many other classes did you do, and how did it work around your own private life too? Because, you just mentioned working from home, right? Yeah. And being able to potentially go for a walk with a dog, be able to do any sort of other duties, because I know a lot of the students on virtual had sometimes full-time jobs, and we were managing to work things around that. So walk me through what your average week would be.
Yeah, well, I am running a community studio. So I run an art center, and luckily I have help, but I do have things I have to do outside of the schoolwork. But I've been really taking advantage of the classes that are offered because they're so good. So I'm really trying to clear my life for these, few years. So it'll be 3 years. I'll say something super interesting is that when I started this program, I had no idea what a certificate was. And, it didn't sound all that exciting to me. And I thought an MFA would be a better choice, but I couldn't do the MFA because I couldn't go in person for 2 years. And it turns out the certificate is amazing. And it's what it's about is getting your practice up to speed. So it's not preparing you to teach, it's preparing you to paint. And I really think that extra year that I'm going into now is just going to be like lightning for me. It's going to really, the heat is on and it's ready to start the fire. That's how I feel.
What an awesome analogy there. It's interesting too, because when you were just saying that too, I was just thinking about, as a teacher, I get to experience everybody's like changes and watching everyone develop. And I would say without a doubt, everybody that comes in, as you even said at the beginning, gets transformed. And part of the, I know that you did my class, you had my drawing class as well. And I know that you took other classes with other people, and there was also Graham Nixon's class that he does with the virtual certificate, and there was a Friday class with Cara, right, that you took as well.
Yeah, I've done it really interesting, and I think anyone can do this. There's my hand-built painting easels. Anyone can do this because as a virtual student, you can attend any classes in person. So I've really managed to do a bunch of in-person classes. I took a class with Ed Praby. I took a class in sculpture. So I've really added a lot of in-person work. And then there's the every week with Graham, which has been unbelievable in terms of changing my understanding of the lineage of art. So I'm learning art history, but in a way from the hand of the artist, not in a like historical perspective, but let's look at what this artist was doing with the tools, with the brush, with the color, with the composition. These are the things that Graham teaches us, and they're just almost mystical. Like they bring you back in time and they allow you to think forward in terms of how you're going to add those references to your paintings. It's really deep. It's deep work.
It's interesting too, right? Because I know the studio school, and it's things that I've gotten students to do too, is we work a lot from transcriptions at different times, which I think is pretty fascinating. Let's talk a little bit about, because I do have an upcoming marathon as well, right? Which I'm just going to show my class that I taught last year, which is not the same one that I taught this year, but this was like basically a 2-week online class where I had people working from landscape, right? And I called it Room with a View, meaning that everybody potentially had either a room in their mind or, something that they were physically looking at. And I had students do loads of different work, and this was a painting marathon. What do you think the marathons give you, right? And we've talked a little bit about it. And this is work from Pat Bantano, and she's a beautiful painter, and you see her different times really just teasing out color ever so gently, right? And then sometimes more obviously with even the thickness of the paint, the thinness of the paint, and giving us those brilliant, landscapes, right? What do you think marathons do for you or have done for you?
I think if someone hasn't tried a marathon, it is a jump start to a new body of work. So it will take you to a new place. And I think that's the whole concept behind the New York Studio School, is to immerse you with colleagues that are going, the next step, and with teachers that can guide us to the next step.
Yeah. And sometimes it's about looking, sometimes it's about getting out of your comfort zone. I love before when you talked about the collage, when you said you kind of bit your lip and just did it, right? So, and I often say, I think we can do most things at least once, right? And sometimes when we, especially in the art world, right, especially when you're challenged maybe to do something that's out of your own comfort level, you might end up getting something more surprising. And sometimes in the classroom setting, I think it's one of those things too. You might see somebody using color in an exciting way. You might see somebody maybe trying something so different that it might give you the permission to change, to try it within your own way, which is something that learning community. And I think sometimes we learn so much more from other people. Would you agree with that statement, or what do you think about that?
Yes, and I think Graham in particular will always give us assignments that are psychologically challenging. Like I can remember on a 8-foot by 3-foot piece of paper doing 9 heads. You know, it took us all day. And at about 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. in the afternoon, he said, now scratch all that out. We're going to do a full figure over it. And everyone just went, oh, wow. So our whole day became, you know, pedamente for the next part. And, you know, we learned a lot by needing to take that step. But I remember, I think I might have even thrown my charcoal at the drawing at that point, you know, because there'd been a lot of work put in.
Yeah.
So all the instructors know to push us further. Yeah, they're not just saying, oh, great, move on. They're like, you know, yeah, what can we see that could be better? It's always what can be better.
Yeah, which is also sometimes like a little frustrating, because you do you know, breakthrough works, right? So one of the things that I always try and do too is acknowledge when I think someone's done something pretty fantastic too, because we do get these, you know, beautiful works sometimes. And this is again another one by Pratt. You know, but the marathon to me is like that cooking pot of ideas and thought processes, and really does allow you sometimes to push color or push ideas a little further than you would too, because in my mind too, a marathon is potentially a 1 or 2 week course where you really do get to maybe be challenged on composition, be challenged on color palettes that you might never ever use, even colors that you might never ever consider putting together. And then most of the time I feel like, you know, you struggle a little bit. And I think this is one of the other things that mostly separates, you know, some of the ways that I think we do learn online is a lot of the instructors don't necessarily give demonstrations, but they nearly, and I know that I believe in this too, because, you know, I give you enough clues, I hope, to be able to push something. But to me, it's more about like, well, let's see what you can do with it. Don't just watch me. Let's see how you can actually really work that forward. So as you said, you know, that building or that melting pot that you're in at the moment, where potentially you're going to really be in a position after you've finished the studio school, and, you know, to be able to then just go into the practice of so much, hopefully maybe even easier, because you'll have those questions yourself. You're not looking for someone just to feed you information. Let's see. Any last statements I think we should both make about what the studio school and what learning either via a marathon and or a certificate program is? And the marathon I have coming up is, I think it's June 19th to the July 1st, which is a 2-week one, which I'm going to be more looking at abstraction than anything else. And I really do believe that abstraction is one of those things that I can see in figurative work. I can break it down into parts, and we can talk about the application of the paint, and then you can maybe talk even about how shapes lock together. So that we'll be going down this path of abstraction, which I think hopefully will be pretty interesting for a lot of people. Whether you've done it before or not doesn't matter, right? And whether how far you delve into abstraction doesn't even really matter either. But I think it's more about that fact of like getting you to explore, giving you that platform that allows you really to broaden your own ideas and your own thinking is really what I'm after. But or for what I'm hoping to impart to students. And I will look at current contemporary artists. So I'll look at anybody that I can think of really that might even like, you know, get you thinking a little bit differently and broader. And as you even said, Catherine, which has been such a pleasure talking with you today, right, about, you know, the way that artists maybe have a slightly different way of thinking rather than art historian. And we look at things maybe a little bit differently. I don't want to generalize that too much, because I know there's some brilliant art historians that will be able to look at certain paintings and really be like, look at the way they lead your eye in, look at the way they, you know, use this particular, you know, idea to really maybe point you to what they're actually more interested in getting you to do, or looking for those hidden figures that you were talking about. So it's not always just giving us the most obvious, answer right up there. But how do we potentially even make works complex that get people staying with the work? And I'm lucky enough to live with a lot of great work, right? Living with work and making work and seeing it day after day. Sometimes I go into my own studio and I'm like surprised by what I've done, right? And it can be that good thing where you're like, God, I never saw that in my own work. How did I not see it? So it's those levels that I think seep in that give you even more complex, more potentially exciting, much more richer works, hopefully, within that process. So that's my sort of last statement. Anything you would like to say, Catherine, as a ending point?
Your class sounds amazing. I wish I was available. I do notice that people, even people that have graduated with their MFAs, they come to take the marathons because it is that jump start to change up. Like if you're ever, not sure what's next for, on your easel, take a drawing or a painting marathon, because it really makes the difference. It like gives you energy, and the work gets better just from that. And I've had people, ask me, can I do a drawing marathon with you? I mean, they're just so fun, and you can do them with a friend. You can have fun.
Yeah. And the other thing about the drawing marathons is it can be, doesn't matter, number one, you can do them online, doesn't matter where you are in the world, right? And it doesn't mean that you have to do the whole certificate program, right? Studio School has awesome evening and Saturday classes that, if you've only got 3 hours a week, you can jump into them. These 2-week marathons are also ones that are held 3 times a year, and the summer session, I think, is pretty extraordinary as well. And then if you, can find the time, the MFA or the certificate, either in person or online, is awesome. Catherine, thank you so much. Always a pleasure. Hang around for me. I'm going to hit our stop button, but thank you for everyone that is joining in at any point. I know Erin is probably going to cut and paste this and maybe use snippets of it, but thank you again for joining us today.